Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley. I'm here with my co-host, Bria Baker. California is in the headlines again, but this time it's not for celebrity gossip or drama or tech layoffs. The streets of LA is lit with resistance, with students, artists, and workers and community members standing up against the injustices in real time.
Yes, from student encampments to labor strikes to calls for ceasefire in Palestine, California has once again become a ground zero for people powered movements. It always has been, though, and that's what we're going to talk about today. This is not new. California has long been this heartbeat of radical protests in the country. The Black Panthers were founded in Oakland, United Farm Workers organized out of Delano, and let's not forget the Watts Rebellion and Rodney King uprisings in LA that forever reshaped American conversations on policing and justice. So, this 21st century iteration feels like a continuation, if anything. And it's incredible to see that legacy of organizing live on in today's young people. And I mean, honestly, it's very intergenerational what's going on right now. So I can't wait to dig into it.
Absolutely. And later on this show, we have one of our favorite people, Tiffany Lofton,
Yes.
who is going to dig deep in with us to talking about one, the historical nature of the California uprisings, but more importantly, how this fits into the national narrative. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the headlines.
Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna start with my good headline, which is that Governor Wes Moore, who we talked about on a previous episode,
Hmm.
he cut a lot of slack from me and from you, just for
Yep.
vetoing the Reparations Commission. But he recently announced, I believe on Juneteenth, a $400 million investment in closing racial wealth gaps, and like one of the largest cannabis pardons in the history of our country, which is really incredible. So I do love to see him leaning into that action. And hopefully there's a lot more that will come from him.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I agree. He caught slack. I mean, I still got some slack,
All
if I
right. I'm gonna say
am
still.
honest with myself, but it's a step in the right direction. It's not the end all be all, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. It's a prime example that sometimes we have to continue to put pressure on. We should never give up putting pressure on our elected officials
Yes.
to actually to not just give us lip service, but actually put money and policy to action. So I'm
Right.
very excited to hear the results of that.
Yeah. And to see the continued rollout because the announcements and the press conferences are cute, but like let's make sure that actual Black Marylanders really benefit from this and this goes to the right places. So I do agree with you. The pressure is important to make sure that it manifests in the right ways.
Yeah, and it's so funny before I get into my headline, it's so funny that much of our our episode today is really about what's happening on the West Coast and the East Coast because one, you're originally from New York.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Philly, but I live in Oakland and you live in Atlanta. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting
So
the
funny.
dynamics that we are existing in and also just like
Yeah.
our perspective being able to like speak to that historical context, but also the relevance of the moment and even more relevant of the moment. If you all watched the New York mayor election, my good news that I wanted to start today talking about is the takeaways from the New York mayoral primary, where you had Zohran
Hmm. Mom
Mudandi.
Donnie.
Mondani, I'll get his name right, Mudandi, who is a 33-year-old Democratic socialist,
Mm.
self-proclaimed, and he has now won the Democratic primary election for the mayoral election against Andrew Cuomo, who is the former governor of New York State.
Former disgraced governor.
Oh, I was about to say that. Yeah, a disgraced governor who had to step down after multiple allegations of sexual harassment from his staff and the Democratic establishment, which is quite entertaining considering how many of them came out in
Hmm.
support of him over the last few weeks. But lo and behold, New York stood up and spoke out, and they
Yeah.
elected the youngest mayoral candidate in the history of New York. And
Hmm.
he is a Muslim born in Kenya, moved to the United States when he was 7, and
Hmm.
has been, I think what I find most inspirational about his campaign, having read the headlines and talked to so many people who are still in New York, is the fact that they didn't feel like he threw any minority group under the bus
Right.
in order to achieve his win, right? He still was able to represent the issues, talk about very real concerns of New Yorkers, and, speak to what's possible. We constantly think that, free transportation, food for the homeless, shelter is somehow far fetched. And I think what
Right.
he's proving is that you can both have aspirational goals and have very real solutions on how to get us there.
Yes, when I'm just so excited by him, and I'm in New York right now too, at my parents' house, and so I've been having so many conversations with other New Yorkers about it. What's also beautiful is as a Muslim man who is Ugandan born, but like ethnically speaking is Indian. His parents are both
Hmm.
Indian.
Hmm.
He is deeply in solidarity with the Black community. I
Yep.
believe he got his degree in Black Studies. His middle name is Kwame after Kwame, the president of Ghana, the former president of
Hmm.
Ghana. And so that's been such a core inspiration for him. He was naturalized and able to vote for the first time in the 2020 election. And so I just think there's so many communities that feel seen and heard by him because he very viscerally understands those communities. He did not have to have a consultant tell him how to speak to Black people, tell him how to speak to immigrants, tell him how to
Exactly.
speak to Muslim New Yorkers. That is a experience that he has had from coalition building, that he's brought to being an assemblyman in Queens, that he now brings here. And so something that he had to fight against during the race was the fact that he wasn't as, you know, he didn't have as much experience as Cuomo, but it's like,
Hmm.
okay, for all of the experience, where did that get Cuomo, right? And
Who
like,
did
where
that
did
get
that get New
us?
Yorkers? Yeah, where did that
Yeah.
get us? And I think that it's just so beautiful because what the funniest thing that I've been seeing on social media is people not from New York being
Hmm.
like, yes, our mayor, but like, I'm
People from
like
all over
miles
the
away.
world, I've seen
Yes,
post comments online saying that this gives them hope for what's
yes, we
possible.
needed it.
Crazy.
We needed it. Yeah.
I love it.
Well, yes, we really needed hope.
Our
Now
other
to
two
get to some
articles on
negative
that.
headlines. We're gonna dig into this too when we talk about California, but at one of the Utah-based protests,
Mm,
a incredible Pacific Islander man was shot and killed, ironically by a peacekeeper at the protest,
wow.
which was alarming. Like, okay, the peacekeepers are armed, so now they're militarized too, and we just see the proliferation of this. But it was really devastating to see. An incredible friend of mine, Teresa Siagatonu, knew him, and so I feel like learn a bit more about who he was through her and what the loss was through her. His name is Arthur Folasa Alu. He was 39 years old, Pacific Islander man who was killed at the No Kings anti-Trump protest in Salt Lake City. And it's been a really devastating blow to the community. I think it's also shown that it is unfortunately becoming a privilege to be able to protest and go home at the end of the night.
Hmm.
And we saw that in Ferguson with tear gas being thrown and with, community members being hit with rubber bullets and being like, severely injured. But to see like loss of life at these protests and to know that speaking up, using your First Amendment right, could very well lead to your life being taken is a really sad thing and something we have to reckon with. And I know that this episode is going live just before July 4th. And so I think, as we have this conversation, we're going to be thinking a lot about patriotism, a lot about who has these foundational rights that our so-called founding fathers fought so hard for versus who has the illusion of it, has a mirage of it. And I think this is definitely a moment where it's like, okay, everyone should have been able to go home at the end of this. It should be a no-brainer that we should be able to protest and speak our minds and be able to go back to our families. And unfortunately, if you're Black or brown, you know, BIPOC in any way, that the chances of that are going to be lowered. And so just sending love to his family. And I know that his community is fighting hard for accountability and for transparency
Yeah.
and for like a shift in how we approach these protests, how we keep ourselves safe at these protests without turning those weapons on each other.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I remember reading that article and learning about the story and feeling really devastated because, no one goes to a protest thinking that they're not going to return home, right? No one goes to exercise what is, we all know to be our constitutional right
Yeah.
and feel like they can't do so unless, unless you are a part of a group of people or fighting for a particular issue that is not deemed to be culture for me, to be deemed to be um, more palatable for the vast majority of America, right? Like if you're fighting
Yeah.
for an issue that, you know, um, feels very isolating, or per a particular marginalized group, you may find yourself faced with a lot of opposition, and in
Yeah.
this case, unfortunately, lose your life.
Yeah.
And we've seen that happen. We've seen people get injured at protests. We've seen people lives taken, and there needs to be some serious reform. But also recognizing that, like, if we're telling people that they have a constitutional right to exercise, to protest, to speak out, then we have to protect that at every
Yeah.
angle. Because yeah, regardless of whatever political aisle you stand on, like, everyone should have the right to be able to voice their concerns and stand in protest, even if I don't agree with them. Like,
Yeah.
even especially when I don't agree with them, because I think that creates a space for healthy discourse and allows for
Hmm.
us to get to the solutions that we all need to feel safe.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
Damn. Well, I hate to go back to my last headline, but
Yeah.
not everything can be positive, unfortunately, in the Trump administration,
Mm.
which is devastating news. So in April, we had a lower court judge in Boston, a U.S. district judge, Brian Murphy, who issued an order to the Trump administration that basically said that they had to halt all third country deportation, meaning that if you were someone that the Trump administration suspected as being an undocumented immigrant in the United States, they can deport you to a country that is not of your origin, your original origin. And the district judge in Boston signed an order basically halting those deportations. Well, on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for the Trump administration to resume deporting migrants to countries other than their own without offering them a chance to show the harm that they could face the harm that they can face if they arrive in that country, many of who have faced violence of all sorts, and have been unalived as a result of these deportations. And I have to say, this is extremely devastating. Like, there is no rhyme or reason to it's one thing saying that this person is here illegally or undocumented and then sending them to a country that is their origin, right? From where
Yeah.
their people are from. It's another thing to begrudgingly send them to somewhere they have no recollection or relation to, have never been to, and just leave them there. And also, we're leaving them in a state, and many times putting them in a third country, in a foreign country, in a prison, so they have no recourse
Mhm.
to actually get out and seek
Yeah.
justice.
It's very much giving human trafficking. And I
Oh,
know
it's a
that
life sentencing,
sometimes
yeah.
using these words, people are like, okay, the reach, or that feels so strong, but we need to be really visceral in what's happening here. Because again, if the point is to return a person to their community,
Mhm.
this is not doing that at all. There's no relationships on the ground for them to say, I'm going to go to so and so's house, I'm going to get a job with this person, I speak this language. Like you might be going to a place where you are completely fish out of water, have no idea what's going on, which then makes you really vulnerable to whatever is happening on the ground to the most vulnerable in that community. You're likely not going to be paid above above the books. You're not
That's
going to
if
be
you
able to
even
get
get in out of prison, right? Many
right,
of them
right.
being
If you can
placed
even
in
get out of
prisons
prison,
and
you're going to
detention
be
centers.
stuck in. So it's such a money making scheme, because
Mhm.
if it was really about returning people to where they are from, there would be more efforts to ensure that families are reunified, extended families even, or friend networks, or whatever the case may be. But it's not that. It's about making sure that this prison can get some free labor, and then that prison can get some free labor, and those beds can stay full, and
Mhm.
the diplomatic relationships between those countries can remain in a way that it's so designed on what is convenient for the politicians,
Yeah.
and not at all for what is best for these people. And again, I think if the narrative is, oh, we're only going after criminals, and it's like,
It's
but you're
cruelty by
raiding
intent.
workplaces and doing this to people who were paying taxes here, who have children here, who have loved ones here, who have neighbors here, who have employers here, who are all vouching for them and loving them, and you're sending them somewhere where they have none of that. Bless you. And so I just think that that is really something to really recognize, is that cruelty is the point. We've said that so many
Mhm.
times on our show. Is like it just seems like the point is, how can we do this in the most fucked up way possible,
Yeah.
in the way that leaves people so scarred, so traumatized, so unable to bounce back. And that is something that we should all be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, and then the administration just continues to show that there is no red line for them, that they're willing to do and be anything in order to appease a very small, minute
Hmm.
portion of America, regardless of the harm that this may have for those families and also for their future generations of those families, right? Many
Yeah.
of those kids are being left with no parents or being
Yeah.
orphaned. Are being thrown into a already broken foster care
Yeah.
system, and communities across the country are being devastated by folks being disappeared off the street. And I say disappeared because there's no recourse. We have no record of where they are, and half the time the administration can't track them.
Yeah.
There is a special place in hell for people who do things like
Truly.
this.
And I'm just like, where are the pro-lifers? Why do the only lives you care about are the ones that could live in a petri dish?
Yep,
Like, why are the only lives you care about fetuses? Do you not care about these children who
absolutely.
have no one picking them up from school because their parents were picked up by ICE while
Mhm.
working? Who, like, you have street vendors in California who are being picked up while selling food to feed their families. You have construction workers who are being picked up on the job, like while they're roofing, while they're like, it's just so callous. It's so frustrating. And I think that's why we're seeing these large protests. I think it's also why we're seeing that California is such a hotbed for them as well.
Mhm.
That a community full of migrant folks is like not letting up, is
Yep.
refusing to go down without a fight. That culture of resistance is so beautiful, and but unfortunately that culture of resistance is only there because there's this counterculture of suppression and brutality that they have to go up against. And so it just feels like history repeating itself. And we talked about the United Farm Workers earlier, and it's just like these
Mhm.
communities have been under attack for generations and generations. As Carmen Perez Jordan says, and many others have used this quote as well, the border crossed them. They didn't cross
Yep.
the border. And so this idea that borders are being put down across community lines, and we are supposed to just deal with the aftermaths of that. And I just love to see that people are saying, like, I'm not going to deal with that. So I'm excited to dig into this
Mhm.
later in this episode, and to hear more about why it's so important that we do speak up, especially those of us who are citizens, who do have the security of knowing that a blue passport will keep us from being
Yeah.
deported for now. But we're seeing green card holders, we're seeing visa holders, and we're seeing naturalized citizens also being swept up in this. And so I think it's also important that we not wait for it to be coming for us. So we learn from what's happening in California about really multiracial solidarity, and what has changed, who's watching, who's documenting, who's joining in, and that we be the people watching, documenting, and joining in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about California, right? These uprisings and shock waves across the nation and the country, I should say, the tactics, demands, the solidarity, the shaping the national discourse on how and why we should all be standing up collectively. So
Yeah.
we're super excited to dig in. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but this is The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Attention! We're back, bigger and stronger than ever. Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
Being a black man, we gotta stop letting this slide.
With new hosts
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
and big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind, it's Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at True Talks Live
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
and don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and True Talks Live. I'll see you there.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. Today, we're going to dig into how the protests are alive and well in California and why it matters for the whole country.
And protest isn't new. Again, this episode is going live the week of July 4th. This nation was founded on the spirit of protest, allegedly, and so it's really important that we honor that legacy and we lean into it. That it is revolutionary, that it is patriotic. That, as James Baldwin says, when you love a space, when you love a country, when you love America, you have the right to critique it relentlessly, and that is exactly what protesters are doing. We believe that this country can be better, and we demand that it must be better. California has always been doing that, has always been at the forefront of this protest spirit. And in fact, according to the Global Protest Tracker, more than 350 protests have occurred in California over the last 5 years alone, making it one of the most active states in the United States for public demonstrations.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, I also love it because I like live there now.
Yeah.
I
mean, you live in the
exactly.
Not just California, but the part.
I am based in Oakland, and I mean, I'm from Philly, but I live in Oakland, and Oakland and Philly are like sisters, like nicely sister cousins, very similar, which is why we can't forget about Oakland, right? The birthplace of the Black Panther Party. The Panthers didn't just feed people; it patrolled police. It also exposed that racial wealth gap that exists in America, how racial capitalism is enshrined within this country, and state-based violence, and how that impacts our ability for upward mobility as a Black community. And in California, schools, particularly in the Bay, they launched the first ethnic studies programs in the country. They laid the blueprint for how the rest of the country is starting to teach about other people other than heterosexual white men who have won wars.
We need that. Thank you, California. And also, just to add on to that, California universities, especially UC Berkeley, being so instrumental to like the fall of apartheid, to boycott movements, just so much. We're going to have another episode soon about boycotts, but just like to know that California as a whole and California young people and young organizers have always been leading the charge in this way is really beautiful. And it's something that we have to recognize as necessary, and not being afraid of the friction. In the words of Assata Shakur, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who are oppressing them. You've got to demand it. You've got to make it unprofitable. You've got to make it non-negotiable. Protest is not just about disruption. It's about survival, and it's about making it so that our thriving and our success and our happiness and our safety is non-negotiable. And right now in places like LA, unfortunately, that protest spirit, that survival energy is being criminalized.
Yeah. I mean, it's a reminder too that like nothing is going to be given to us in this country. We've seen that, especially as Black folks, that we constantly have to be vigilant about our own safety and the safety of others who are just as vulnerable, who come from communities where the systems that we live within, the institutions that govern our society, were never set up to protect us, were never set up to uplift us. And so using protests as a forum to not only draw awareness to these inequalities, awareness to these injustices, but also to build solidarity across the aisle. We're talking about California, but we also talked earlier in the show about the mayoral race, and that was a coalition of folks across demographics, across social economic classes, across racial and wealth gaps. So, this work, making America truly what it can be, requires solidarity, requires allyship in ways in which that we've never seen before, but also learning from our ancestors and learning from the protests in California. There have been crackdowns, right? Protests haven't always been seen as and still are not seen as a way in which to, move the government in the right direction. Since April, over 2,000 students and faculty members have been arrested nationwide during the pro-Palestinian protests, and more than 350 in California alone. At the UCLA, peaceful demonstrations were met with riot gear, rubber bullets, and detainment. And I know so many people across the country who have lost jobs, who have lost opportunities, who they themselves have been ostracized within their communities for caring about the livelihoods of other people. Sadly enough, that is one of the fallacies of being an American, is that although you have the right to protest, best believe someone is going to look for ways to punish you for caring about other people and caring about yourself enough to expect the government to do and be better.
Right. And that attack on collectivism and on community is so mind-blowing because it's what keeps us safe. If anything, the government should be incentivizing us to care about our neighbors, to care about our families, to care about our friends, to care about the people that we work and go to school with, because then it doesn't strain government resources as much. When I know that my neighbor is not going to let me starve, that my neighbor's not going to let someone break into my home without putting up a fight, it allows us to stand in the gap. And unfortunately, it just seems like the government is incentivizing us in the opposite, for us to say, let me mind my business, let me close the doors, close the lamps, all of the things, and just worry about me. And what that leads to is more scarcity, more depravity, more precarity.
Yep.
And it's not just in how we protest. It's also the way that it feels like it's incentivized as far as like media and the press too, because it's like, they don't want us to know what's going on. They don't want us to be informed, to be aware. And so as a result, press freedom is also under attack. There was a 2024 report from the Freedom of the Press Foundation that found that California ranks in the top 3 states for journalist arrests during protests.
Wow.
Which is insane stat to realize. Number one, that journalists are being arrested during protests in any state is something we should be alarmed by. I'm going to need to go back to that report and find out who's number 1 and number 2. But yeah, it's really alarming to realize that at a protest, you would think that the people who should be hands off, untouchable, should be journalists and lawyers. They are there to be watchdogs. They're there to make sure that that there is accountability. And so when you're arresting members of the press, it's like, what are you hiding? What do you not want folks to see? And so now advocacy groups like the Press Freedom Defense Fund are suing LA for excessive force used against reporters who are covering ICE protests, which I love to see, again, that resistance and that protest spirit. And they're doing it in their own way. But the fact that it's even coming to that is just like, where are we? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, and we should have known that, the roosters would come home eventually, right? We saw how we allowed peacekeepers, and how we allowed, and I mean peacekeepers in the international sense, and how we allowed for journalists and medical workers be obliterated internationally, right? Like how they were destroyed and unalived in places like Palestine and in Congo. And we allowed that to happen. It was only a matter of time before we saw those same tactics be employed here. I mean, I watched the video of a reporter being shot. Like, you saw the officer turn towards her, clear day, target her and shoot her dead in the leg while she was on the air. So it's a prime example that they are, they're testing the limits of what society will allow them to do. And, going back to your point earlier, talking about this idea where society is almost, particularly the United States government, is almost pushing us to only care about ourselves. It's individualism, right? Like that is what this country and what capitalism thrives on at the most. It does not want us to share resources with each other. It does not want us to build community with each other. And that's when we look at historical context of like marginalized groups, or I should say members of the global majority, which are Black and brown folks, right? Asian and indigenous folks, right? We come from spaces and communities where to share, to be in community, to build across is expected, right? Very communal culture, and yet we're now then forced in the United States to almost be very individualistic, and that it has devastating implications for our community, right? The village is no longer there to help protect us and to help shepherd in the next generation of young people, and they do it deliberately, so we depend on the government, and then when we can't depend on the government no more, we isolate ourselves and depend on ourselves. And I love to see people, building and collaborating with each other, because this is not just about like civil rights in the sense of like, do I have them? It is also about a country that is trying to control the narrative for the rest of the world. And blinders are now being taken off in a real way. Protesters are have been painted as violent and extremists, but at the same time, we see police officers coming in with military grade equipment. Now, I have been to many protests, and I have never seen anyone do anything that requires the government to roll in with a tank on American soil. And so, prime example, you only see that particularly when there's Black and brown folks fighting on behalf of Black and brown folks. Rarely do you see it when white folks are out there protesting things like, or just, cheering on their favorites.
I was just about to say, because, I know you love your Philly girl, but the way y'all will turn that city upside down for them Eagles.
I mean, the mayor had to get on TV and tell folks the day before, like, please don't destroy downtown.
Please leave the lights up. Do not climb the post. Like, so it's like, okay, white people are allowed to
Do
get
anything.
buck and do anything that they want. And when we are righteous to saying, hey, we're really frustrated with the fact that you're killing us slowly or fast, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, they're just like crazed, and we've got to
Mhm.
corral these people and bring them in. And it's, yeah, like you said, rolling in tanks. And it's just very um alarming to see the National Guard be pulled out on its own citizens in a country that prides itself as being a democracy, as having freedom of speech, as being able to teach others democracy, because we are so good at it, that we have to go into, the Middle East and Southwest Asia and North Africa
Mhm.
and other parts of the global South and teach them democracy. But when our citizens are protesting, we're literally rolling out all of the stops in the militaries. It's yeah, it's a lot.
It's
It's a lot.
America. It's America.
Yeah, it is America. It is America. And again, we've got to dig into that. I think we need to talk about like what are people celebrating when they celebrate July 4th? Like
Mm,
unfortunately in this day and age in 2025, that is what it means to like to support your troops, to support your president, to support this administration, is to
yeah.
support the crackdown on our ability to speak up and out about what is not serving us. Universities who speak it up and out are losing funding. International students are being blocked. People are being kidnapped on the street by ICE agents in masks, to the point where you're like, how do I even know these people are ICE agents? I'm not even being shown a warrant, a badge.
Mhm.
No one's identifying themselves, but I'm just supposed to go with these people. And so it's no wonder that these multiracial movements are popping up, because we're all recognizing that in different points in our history in this country, this is really familiar. For Black folks, this is like very reminiscent of, fugitive slave acts and mass incarceration and over policing in our communities. For Chicanos in California, for Caribbean folks, for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, like there's always been this push to um, to tell us when we can and cannot be angry, when we
Mhm.
can and cannot express that. What is a healthy way of expressing that? Because yeah, then if we start burning down buildings, then that's not okay. But then when we're trying to use media and have nonviolent protests, that's also not okay. And so I think that's why we're seeing these multiracial coalitions popping up, and why it's so important to see them. It's like when we talk about the 1992 uprisings about Rodney King, yes, it was Black outrage for sure, but it also sparked a lot of solidarity work between Black, Latinx, and even Korean communities, even though that was also a part of the race riots as well. Same thing with Standing Rock, George Floyd protests, Stop Asian Hate. Like at every turn, we see ourselves in each other, and so
Mm.
those pushes to make us individualistic don't work, because if anything, when I see things happening to immigrant communities, even though I'm not an immigrant, I'm like, this looks really freaking familiar, and
Too
I'm not gonna let y'all go down by yourselves. Like I'm not gonna let my neighbors be
familiar.
taken in the middle of the night and me not say anything. So I love to see California showing up, not just in these cities, but across rural communities, in farming communities, in the valley, in the suburbs,
Yeah.
and to see the rest of the country being inspired by it too.
Yeah, the country is waking up, right? On both sides of the country, both in California and New York, they're waking up to the fact that there is something possible
Yeah.
that we different than what we've been led to believe, that we can dream a little bit bigger, and we also can stand in solidarity with each other, because our experience in America is only as good as the rights we get to have and the people that we have around us, and the narrative of this idea that Um, we can't invest in people. We can't invest in communities and still have safer places. I can tell you now, as someone who used to do police accountability work, many states, including California, received billions of dollars since for the last decade in policing. California alone received 15.2
Yeah.
billion in funding in 2023, while things like homelessness and healthcare and education continues to go under resourced. And we know by the data that if we actually invest in things that make people whole, that that provides people housing, food, their most basic necessities, that actually drives down crime. And budgets are more document. That's why I think we need to be very honest, intellectually honest with our elected officials, and telling them that, and pushing back against their budgets, and saying that, this doesn't represent the needs of Californians, but also the needs of the country. And that's why I think this moment is really unique in a way, because it is intergenerational, it is multicultural, and it's happening in a time where I think most people would feel extremely scared because we don't have a government that is even trying to pretend that they give a damn about decorum, right? Trump doesn't care about decorum. He's going to lock people up, and he is willing to send them to third country, to parties that, to countries that are not of their origin.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely dangerous, and it's making a lot of people, rightfully so, terrified. I mean, I'm terrified, but I don't think it makes me terrified enough not to do something about it.
Right, exactly. That's the big thing. We have to push through the fear and recognize that, as much as people love to say we're living in unprecedented times, unfortunately, we are not.
Yep.
We have elders and ancestors who have survived similar, if not worse,
And people
situations
who
with
didn't
less.
survive.
Right. And people who didn't survive, but they've gone through those moments with less resources than we have now, with less visibility and connection to the outside world than we have now. And so we've got to use all the tools in our tool belt to resist these moments, because, we know where this leads. We know that criminalization of protests leads to an overfunding of police, leads to a militarization of police, leads to mass incarceration. We've seen this in other eras. We've seen this in response to the civil rights movement and the Black Panther, Black Power era. So the point is to tell us that dissent isn't welcome. And if we lay down and take that, then it, as you said earlier, it shows, okay, that's what it takes to get them to shut up. And they will only continue to use the same blueprint against us. But what they forget is that protests built this country, that we are tapped in with our elders, that we are in multi-generational and multiracial coalitions that can tap in and say, okay, well, this is how my elders did it in this movement, and how did your elders do it in that movement, and what did y'all do in the 70s, and what did y'all do in the 30s, and what did y'all do in the face of KKK violence, and what did y'all do during we can learn from these eras before us and be inspired and say, yeah, no, California, this is not the first time that we have been a hotbed for protest. We have experienced the free speech movement of the 60s, the student-led protest, the Compton cafeteria riot led by trans women of color that predated Stonewall. We have been here before, and we're going to get through this again. And again, unfortunately, we don't want to romanticize it. Not everyone survives it, but it's so important that we not roll over and go without a fight, because again, that is how this nation was founded. Was our enslaved ancestors fighting, were indigenous ancestors fighting, were immigrant ancestors fighting, all for our place in this richest, most powerful country in the world. And so now in 2025, the debt has been paid, the dues have been paid. It is time for us to reap the benefits of what it means to live in a democracy, which means we are not going to shut the fuck up. We are going to stay loud and stay vocal and stay insistent that we deserve so much more than this administration is trying to give us.
Couldn't agree more. I guess that's why the question is, why not? The question shouldn't be, why are they protesting? The question should be, why should they have to? And hopefully we get an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper in the next segment as we bring in our guest, Tiffany D. Lofton, in the next segment. So you are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. And we'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. We have someone who is not a stranger to the Roland Martin community, not a stranger to the Black Star Network. We have powerhouse organizer and educator Tiffany Dina Lofton. Tiffany Dina Lofton is a nationally recognized labor organizer, educator, and civil rights advocate. She is a Los Angeles native and first-generation college graduate who served as Student Union Assembly president at UC Santa Cruz, where she also just gave an incredible commencement speech, might I add, and y'all need to watch that. She also served as president of the United States Student Association, where she was leading national student voter campaigns and fighting for debt relief and educational equity. Appointed by President Obama to the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans, Tiffany has held key roles at the AFL-CIO and NAACP. She now serves as the interim ED of USSA, guiding its national rebuilding efforts, and teaches at UC Santa Cruz while also hosting the podcast, How We Get Free, a platform for organizers and change makers. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you, sisters. It's good to see y'all. Good morning.
I don't know why I'm getting excited. Like, I don't talk to Tiffany every day. It's kind of
Like she didn't talk to me till 1 o'clock last night in the morning. We talking about go to bed. I know we talk every day.
We do. But it's always a pleasure. I mean, the reason why I talk to Tiffany every day, because she's just the voice of reason. Like, she has such a large breadth and knowledge of what's going on, but also just like a deep compassion for people. And I think that's reflective in the fact that you have dedicated your life to organizing, right? Organizing, I tell people all the time, organizing is not protesting. Both are equally important, but there takes a unique skill set. And I think Tiffany has shown that that is required in our work in a really strategic way, because it helps us to be able to create goals and systems and processes and bring people together to actually create the kind of change that is going to be sustainable. So I am always excited to talk to you, and I appreciate that you got onto this call today. I want to start off because, you have been someone that has worked at the national level, but you have helped organizers around the country in states working on everything from student debt to getting individuals released from prison, like the real hard work off of death row. Can you tell us, considering the recent protests that are happening both in LA, but also the wins in New York, right? Like, what stands out to you about this moment, particularly around how people are organizing and coming together?
Great question. First of all, thanks for having me on the show, and congratulations to the show, ladies. Y'all are awesome. And we need more young Black women who are intelligent and have a rational and very true, honest reflection of what's happening, not only so that people can learn how to plug in this moment, but also for the future, because people need to actually understand what really happened. And I don't want them to go to Fox News. So thank you for doing that. I'm thinking about like the moment that we're in right now. And as Bree said, I'm organizing the National Student Association. So USSA, which was founded in 1947, the last 8 years has kind of been a little dormant. The pandemic had a huge impact on that, and so on and so forth. So my read right now, and what I'm, my reflections are coming from a place organizing millions of college students across the country who are now in summertime, right? So they're not on college campuses for the most part. Some of them might be in summer school, but they're not on college campuses for the most part. They went back to their community so that they can participate in their internships or help their family. But these are the exact same young people who are on the front lines protesting, and a lot of what you all shared in the last segment, right? We're looking at young folks who across the country are repeating what generations before them have done, which is to say a lot of what you all have said. They believe in the empathy and like the protection of their communities. That is cross-racial, cross-intergenerational, cross-geographical, cross-language barriers. But most importantly, they're all resisting the oppression on systematic racism, on policing, and around infringing on their First Amendment rights. And I think that common thread, which has continued, will morphs into different like versions of social justice movements. So we saw Black Lives Matter. We saw I'm on the foundation board for United We Dream. We saw that in the immigration movement and fight, but it's going to keep morphing, and we're going to keep seeing generations continue to do that as long as that oppression and that threat has been there. And that's the beautiful thing about, like, yes, this is America, right? As you all said, but that is the beautiful thing about what we have done as a movement, is to not only replicate ourselves, but to continue the legacy and the discipline of pushing back and resisting on when that violence happens.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, preach. I mean, and to that point, can you help us connect the dots between Watch Rebellion, Rodney King protests, BLM, and what we're seeing now on college campuses? Because what we've been reiterating throughout this episode is the fact that student-led organizing is not new. And student-led organizing in response to things that are happening off campus are not new either. It's not just us protesting against decisions our college president is making, but it's also saying that we don't live in a vacuum and we exist in this larger world, and we're going to bring that to our campus and make our voices heard. But because you have done so much youth and college and student organizing, can you help us, like, our listeners hear that?
It's not just, I mean, ladies, we do this all the time, right? Like, we have to, and it's easy for us to we've been in this work for so long, it's easy for us to not remember how important it is to make the political personal.
Yes.
And what you just said about, like, yes, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. I would say more importantly, we're human beings. We're not students. We're not just workers. We're not just labor union organizers. I just came off of organizing for Delta flight at 28,000 flight attendants at Delta Airlines. And I'm like, I've learned so much, not just about the aviation space and the career that these women have, and women and men have, around flying in the air and passing out soda and crackers, right? Like, their actual safety at the workplace, their actual dignity at the workplace, their ability to they don't have paid sick leave. If you don't fly, you don't work, you don't get paid, right? And like what that means for poverty, for flight attendants who you would think a flight attendant, that's their full-time job. Many of them have multiple jobs because Delta is changing their flights all the time in their routes, and they don't have enough spaces for flight attendants to fly. And again, if they don't fly, they don't get paid. And they're taking care of their parents, and they've got kids, and they're trying to redo their homes, and they're trying to move, and then all the things. And so we often categorize socially, like, the roles that people play in society, as opposed to, like, removing those labels and saying, I'm a Black woman. I am a daughter. I am the oldest of 3. I live in Atlanta, not for long, but I live in Atlanta. And I'm a dog parent, and I'm a college graduate, and I'm a civil rights organizer. And what are the things we actually do, and how do we relate to each other? And so when you ask the question about, like, what does this mean for what we've seen in the past? Like, some of us were here and some of us weren't here when this stuff was happening. You know, your question just made me think. I graduated high school 2007. 2006, I remember my first, like, I call it dangerous protest. I'm using quotation because nothing happened to me, but it was dangerous. It was risky. I remember, like, doing things in school that weren't risky, but, like, the first thing that I remember being, like, nervous of resisting and protesting was in 2006. I can't remember who the governor was, but Congress in DC was working on a bill, HR Sensenheimer bill, something like that. Forgive me, HR 4388 or some number, whatever it was. Here's what the bill did. It didn't pass, but here's what the bill did. It had passed in the House, and the bill criminalized undocumented students. And it also criminalized anybody who wanted to help undocumented people. And, like, thousands of students in high school in the Los Angeles Unified School District, LAUSD, walked out of their classes, took to the streets, and particularly, I remember, this is why I said it was dangerous, they took over the 101 freeway, which, if you're in LA, when we say the 101, there's only, I mean, Kendrick already schooled the rest of the world, but it's only a few freeways in LA. It's the 10, it's the 101, it's the 405, and it's the 5. Like, that's pretty much, and the 101 was a big deal. And I remember being a young person and, like, not caring what I think my mother would have said if I walked out of class and, like, left school. Remembering that teachers and educators who also had families who were undocumented supported these young students who were walking out and protesting. That was 2006. I remember my first protest. I went to Birmingham High School, city champion in track and field. You're welcome. And so I think about, the events that you've listed, Bria, and I'm like, every generation has the opportunity. And every single time we look at history, young people, high school age, middle school age, college age, young people, and they don't have to be in school. I should name that. These are young people who are also not students. Their intersections show up in how they resist and how they push back and how they fight, right? And so our job, I think, as narrators of what's happening in this moment, and as we think about like analyzing what the connections are, is to say a few things. One, they're continuing to resist systematic racism. And every time they do it, government, whether that's federal or statewide or local, practices how far they can go to silence the resistors. And we have seen time and time again victories, and we have to be able to name them. We can't just be like, America's fucked up. I heard you curse earlier Sunday. we have to say, okay, we've seen how people protest, people get mad, people light things on fire, people, go to city council meetings and cuss people out. People, vote, and then they remove people from office. We have seen victories of policy changes that have happened. We have seen victories in protecting freedom of speech on campuses across the country. We have seen victories of people who are more courageous win positions so that they can support all the things that is happening. I don't know if you guys saw the movie with Regina King playing Shirley Chisholm, but
so good.
We saw the story of how Barbara Lee was a student on her college campus in California, and how she was organized for that. And so like the generation of that work and the connecting of the dots is every time we do that, we see government resist, or excuse me, we see government organized to silence and suppress the resistance. And the dot is this. What's the quote? They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Is that every single time, that's the dot, right? The dot keeps moving because every single time you try to bury us, those seeds continue to grow. And in LA particularly, which I am a proud, born and raised product of Los Angeles, like that is instilled in so many of us. And we are when I was a student, when I was a young person, I didn't know what undocumented what. It was Black and brown people, right? Like that's what I knew. What is undocumented? What's paperwork? Who has that? My mama got stuff underneath the mattress. Like that's not even right. And so, and that proves that I'm a citizen. Like, what are you talking about? And now that that's happening, there are so many coalitions, as Jameer said earlier, that have existed and that have been birthed from these dots that keep moving. And I think about like the Black Lives Matter movement and the solidarity, particularly in Los Angeles, from the brown community. I think about just like the Rodney King protests and the solidarity that happened with the brown community, and how we watch people support each other across racial barriers that, like, again, and you talked about UC Berkeley fighting against the war. It's not known, but UC Santa Cruz, which is the school I graduated from, and thank you for the shout out, Bria. That campus was formed or birthed after UC Berkeley. And it was particularly built in a way, this is the only UC out of all the UCs that are built this way, where it has 10 different colleges. All the other University of California schools don't have this structure, but UC Santa Cruz has 10 different colleges. And they designed it that way so that the students, they saw what happened at Berkeley, and they were like, we don't need the students to be unified like that no more. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one more university, but we're going to make 10 different schools so that they're separate. And that's why I keep saying they tried to bury the seeds that continue to grow. Like, I came from Santa Cruz and I've been protesting my whole life. Like, what are we talking about? So when we think about the different schools that exist and like how Santa Cruz is organized in that way, I just continue to like remember and realize and stay grounded in like our folks, California, around the globe. If we're being serious, there's so many courageous people, but we're talking about LA. Like the stuff that's happening in LA and the stuff that's happening in California is inspiring people to continue to be courageous. And if we remember one last thing out of all of that, is that we are stronger together than we are as individuals. And people in LA right now are realizing that again and again and again.
Yeah, it reminds me, there's a quote by Tupac that says, I may not change the world, but I will spark the brain that will change the world. And I think as we see these very spark these small and large protests, it is inspiring folks elsewhere to realize that these things are possible, that we can actually resist. And, as someone who's been at a number of protests, I would be remiss to not mention fear as a reason why a lot of us are showing up to the protest, but also a lot of reasons why a number of us are not showing up to the protest. How have you, Tiffany, as someone who has been in this work for so long, how are you working with students who are on college campuses, who are facing academic penalties, who are facing police presence? How are you grappling with the real fear, both in yourself, but also what students are feeling and telling you in their work?
I just had this conversation the other day with a student who said to me, I'm not going to say their name, a student who said to me, hey, I'm not going to participate in the work that is being facilitated anymore because I have aspirations to run for office.
Wow.
And I don't want, this is their quote, I don't want to be the black sheep that people associate with the progressive work that the organization is doing. And I was like, wow. This is not what I said to them. Mm-hmm. I had to be delicate because my relationship with them was not close. And that's the other thing. We argue with people that we're not close with, and we need to stop doing that. I'm not close with this person. So I was trying to figure out is there a way for me to move them? And I decided in that moment, it wasn't the best thing for me to try to do. And I said, they'll, plant seeds and they'll grow. And I said to you all, just like how dangerous it is for people to feel like in order for them to serve in leadership, that they have to be neutral and like invisible and like nonpartisan and afraid, right? Like you think that your career is in jeopardy because you're going to support immigration. Why would you run for office if you don't have a stance on immigration? And what makes you think people who are in the community who are voters are going to consider you if you don't take brave and courageous stances? And that's the beautiful thing about what just happened in New York City, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're watching a young candidate who's taking really brave stances on things that the community feels, because clearly they voted for him in majority. But that some people just think like, hey, it's taboo. You shouldn't really go there. And we have to stick to business as usual. And that is the nature of the disruption of the fear, Jamira, is like the fear is not often, will I put myself in danger? The fear is I am going against tradition. I'm going against what society has put in place as the instructions of how I should operate and move and walk and think and talk. And like, that is the fear, because the concern is what happens on the other side of that. And that's what the podcast is called, right? Like what happens on the other side of that? And why are we so afraid of it? That's the fear. And so for him, I was like, I got to just let him do what I don't know this guy. So I got to let him do what he's been doing. But for the students that I am organizing with, they're not afraid of what's on the other side. So they're going to take risk. That's why we see young people move in every movement we've seen. Young people always take the risk. They're not afraid. What they are afraid of is being alone. That's what the folks that I'm working with, that's what they're afraid of. They're not afraid of police. They're not afraid of ICE. They're not afraid of Donald Trump. They're not afraid of Israel. They're afraid of being by themselves. And so what I have, as an organizer, dedicated a lot of like last year and this year to, and all of the different projects that I've, been working in is, can we create safe institutional organizations that allow people to connect based off of their values so that they don't feel alone? Where is the space for young people to go right now where they can talk about what's happening with Iran? Yeah. And it cannot be social media and the comment section, right? Right. Like, where is the place that young people can go right now to recover from what's happening in ICE? And I have a dear, dear, dear brother who is like my big brother, but he's really my little brother, but whatever. And his name is Tyrone Nance, and he is the executive director and founder of an organization, him and his wife, Molly, of an organization called It's Bigger Than Us. And he works with Roxy, who's the founder of The Source LA, who I deeply, deeply love and respect. And both of them have made and then there's Etienne, who's the founder and executive director of Walk Good LA. And they have turned their spaces into retreats, not like a week getaway, but like my physical brick and mortar is a place where you can come, where we can have these tough discussions about what's happening in our community, and then like brainstorm the things that we know we want to do moving forward. And you'll meet new people along the way. And that's the fear that we're tackling. It's like, we don't want to be alone. I don't want to go to a protest by myself, right? Yeah. Like, that's why I share my location with Jamira all the time, so she knows where I'm at. Like, I
do know.
And she knows that for me. She's like, "Why are you outside?" "Oh, I'm at the, it's fine." But people don't want to be by themselves, and that's the fear. The fear is also like not being brave. The fear is, here's the fear. I'm trying to articulate it with words. If I can't fight for the things that convict me, if I can't respond to the violence I'm seeing on social media, if I can't say something about something that's happening that's wrong, if I can't do anything about the genocide happening in Gaza, that is their fear. That is what mentally and emotionally stresses people out and puts people in a cocoon that says, I feel fear because I feel like I can't do anything, and I know I should and I want to. And so now I'm having this conversation in my head of like, am I doing enough? What more can I do? Those are the two places of fear. It's like not being by myself, and then like, can I not do anything? Yeah. And do I just operate in the matrix? And that fear can be undone when we create strong organizations.
Yeah.
Wow. That was like some deep social.
It was a nice little sermon.
No, for real. But it was also like an important social.
I like thinking about these things with y'all. This is great. Like,
yeah.
more conversations.
I'm going to be
like
thinking
this.
about this for a while. Because I think that's real. I think people are afraid of sticking out their neck, but more so about being the only one sticking out their neck and what it means to be standing alone on that island. So how do we make people feel safe in numbers? So yeah, anyway.
Can I make it spicy really quickly? Do we have time?
Yeah, please do.
There might be one more fear. I'm thinking this through with y'all right now. There might be one more fear. This is spicy. There are some young folks who remember the pandemic happened. So there was this gap in leadership transition and training for young folks that like I am really invested in sort of rectifying and right sizing up. But there are a bunch of students, I asked them, like, who are the people that you look up to now as activists and organizers and leaders, right? And the list is very interesting and very, very small. And the list is also not based on things that I would categorize as like leadership qualities and traits or organizer traits. Like they're, like Jameer said, they're protesters, right? And I'm like, why are you looking up to that protester? Because they have a lot of followers. That's interesting. Here's the spicy fear. The spicy fear is a lot of my students, and not many, but I know a bunch of them who have said, I don't want to step up in leadership. I don't want to stick out my neck and resist fear because I'm afraid of what the movement is going to say about me.
Ooh.
Oh, I believe it.
That's real.
That is also fear. So sometimes I get the category of like, I see what happens to Tiffany when she says blah, 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 blah. And that's how I feel too. But I don't even feel like dealing with that on the internet. Right. And so then they say, I don't want no parts of it. I'll come, but like, I don't want to speak. Or I'll come, or I'm not running for office, or I'll come and I'm not. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting too. So
it reminds me. I mean, because we like to pretend, not we, the three of us, but I think we as society like to pretend that MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and other leaders were always beloved, right? They faced their own opposition with it, and people who look
they'll be loved when they're dead, and they're dead and gone now, and everybody love them. Yep,
exactly. So it is a real fear that people think that they are going to be rejected by the very communities that they're fighting for, and I think that is visceral and scary to think that I am out here putting my neck, my livelihood, my body on the line, and you're criticizing me hell for something as simple as like my hair or the way I talk or the fact that I'm not articulating in a way that is,
or the family I come from. Like, I'm progressive, but my parents grew up in the Black church and they still get things together. And now I don't want to put my family on Front Street or whatever the case may be. It's real. I mean, even when it doesn't come from your community, but even just having your business out there. I remember when Stacey Abrams was running for governor, they bringing up her tax records, telling people she got tax debt. That she got
her relationship.
Right.
Is she gay? Is she straight? Is she married? Why she got no kids?
And
it's like, why are you in my business like that? Yeah.
That's real. That's the reason people all the time, would you run for office? No, for that reason. Like I am a queer mom, a wife of a wife. Like do I want to put my family in positions for that? So yeah, that's
I gotta go get your book, Priya. You still, sis. I know you I texted you the other day. You texted me back. Is there any way I can get you to sign my book before I leave?
Girl, no, we have to get together. I'm gonna text you because I'm gonna come over and help you pack some boxes. We're gonna
no, she not packing no boxes.
Yes, I will.
No, you're not.
You should have seen
you don't
me
have to
yesterday.
pack a
I was at a
single thing.
wedding.
You gonna sit your light-skinned self in the corner.
Here's what I
Okay.
need. What I need is for you to come by and point at stuff and say, "What you doing with that? What you doing with that?" So that way it moves me to kind of hurry up. But I need you to sign my book before I go. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
I appreciate you. No. But also, I'm leaving at the time. The one thing I love about Tiff is like we can talk for days, and she is going to like pour into us, but then she's going to leave and pour into more people. And I don't want to keep you from the training that you have to get, and the people that you have to pour into. So before you leave, just give us like quick, what's giving you hope right now? What, we've talked about things that are holding us down, that are heavy, but like, what's giving you hope? What's exciting you?
Other than your friendship with me, of course.
And our FaceTime date as you drive across the country.
Oh yeah, you keeping me company on the road. I got a long time ahead of me. What's keeping me hope? I have a lot of faith that is unconditional, unwavering, that not only are we on the right side of history, because that's not what guarantees a win, but that as much as we care and as hard as we are fighting and as much risk as we are taking to figure out how to undo and then fix and rebuild things, that we will be victorious. I believe in victory so much bigger than like Donald Trump. I believe in victory so much more and deeper than the separation of families. I believe in success and like winning, more than the fear that many folks have on like what they're going to do just today, and how they're going to get through just today. Like that long expectation that this can't be this way and we will be victorious, which is rooted in my faith practice as like a Christian woman. Like I just really believe unequivocally and without question, there's nothing that anybody can tell me that'll change my mind, that we've got the victory.
Yep.
Yes.
And I was talking to Jamira on one of these days, because we talk every day. And I forgot what I told you, Jamira. That was like some rhyme I made. I was like, there's not enough being done right now, but somebody got to do something. Do you remember what I said? I was like, there's not enough being done right now, but like, we're not. Oh, this is what I said. Something to this extent. I said, there's not enough being done right now, and we're not here long enough. Somebody got to do something, right? Like that's my hope. My hope is all of us are here for a season, and we've unfortunately dealt with a lot of loss recently, but I know, and I've seen examples and I've seen practices, and I believe that like we would just be victorious. And that is a choice, right? Yeah. So when you ask me like what keeps me hopeful, it's the choice to be hopeful. Because I can really be like, girl. Me and Jameer would call each other in the morning and be like, did you see what happened? They're building the ICE detention center in Florida for $44 billion. Did you see that? Like we could easily lose hope and just be tired and exhausted. And that happens. That's not to say that we're immune to that, but I just have the choice to believe. Yeah. And that, thankfully, I find people along my journey who also believe, and I just work with them.
Yeah.
I like that.
I hear that.
Take like almost taking back our right to be able to regulate our emotions in this moment, and not just like our protest. We know how they like to take that.
Sometimes we need to lash out and what's the kids say? Crash out every night.
I had to crash out. I crash out once a week.
And then we call each other and we do that, right? But like, and then we'll get back on track, and then we just have to choose to believe and hope at the end of the week, and it'll take us out, because that's what violence does. But at the end of the day, are you going to choose hope, or are you going to just, And I listen, as somebody who has dealt with depression and grief and anxiety, and I called Jamil yesterday crying because I had to get an MRI on my foot and I had a whole panic attack. But like, I choose to get up this morning and still believe that today's going to be better than yesterday. And I believe that with this country. I believe that with our people. I believe that with my community, my friends, my family. We're going to get through this. It's going to be all right. And it's gonna be better on the other side.
It's going to be better on the other side. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. We know you're about to go train those young folks.
Lucky are we?
We need you to encourage them to, to keep up the fight, because we all got to play our role. We all have a role to play.
I'm about to go repeat this over there with them.
Yes, please.
Just tell them the same thing.
As you should. Have a great day.
Thank you. Great job again, ladies, with this podcast. I love y'all.
No, thank you, sis.
We're going to take a quick break. You are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. This episode reminds us that California isn't just a place of wildfires and palm trees. It's a battlefield for justice and always has been.
Yeah. And we're going to leave y'all with ways to dig deeper and learn more. So if you want to learn more, you definitely have to pick up Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor's book, From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation. So powerful. One of my favorites. Also, Free the Land by the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. And then Tiffany Dina Lofton, you've got to follow her online. She's always sharing what I love is like information for your awareness, but also calls to action for you to do something about it with what you know. So follow her on every single platform, listen to her podcast, do all the things. Also follow the People's City Council and Stop LAPD Spying Coalition so that you can support LA specific initiatives to support protesters and keep the spirit of protest alive.
Absolutely, because protest is not the problem. Oppression is. Let's keep showing up, standing up, and speaking truth to power.
Until next time, stay safe, stay loud, stay rooted. You're watching The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.